And as you know, as you remember, we had so the last few months, C.P. Livni, the head of the Jewish Agency, Nathan Sharansky, Professor Trachtenberg, the list, wow, it's an enormous list. And I'm very happy that David Saranga joined us. And we ask our friend Steve to introduce Ambassador Saranga. And first, David, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Appreciate that, your time. And you'll get to know in a second, David. He's really a great guy, one of the leaders of the foreign ministry today. And he has a very tough job at this point. Edith, you want to say something before we'll start?
Yeah. Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the globe. I'm Edith Reitzis, Director of Outreach and Development here in the States for Friends of the Daniel Centers. It's really, truly wonderful to see new faces and longstanding friends, and we're really grateful for you to being here, and more importantly, to being a part of the Daniel Center family and supporting us and the work that we're doing to build a better Israel. And we're just excited to be able to provide you these events and give you a window into Israeli life, politics, the situation over the past year. A few seconds of housekeeping. We are recording this event because some of our supporters cannot attend, so we like to share that to those. I would ask everybody to mute their mics, and we will have a conversation with Ambassador Saranga, and we'll have Q&A. If you can put in the chat, we'll organize it that way. If you can send me or in the group, but that will be how we'll do it. So I will get started. I want to thank our board members who are on, and as I said, longtime friends and new friends. And I'm going to hand it over to a longtime friend of ours and supporter, Steve Pruzan, all the way in Seattle. Thank you, Steve. And why don't we get this started?
Okay, thanks. It's great to see everybody and to be asked to introduce the ambassador. You know, I've been involved with the Daniel Center for years because of the amazing work that Mayor and everyone at the center does. We're fortunate, I'm fortunate now that Miriam and Larry have their daughter out here in Seattle, so we get to see them from time to time. And you know, the center's been doing great work for a lot of years, and everybody knows now that since October 7th, that work has become so much more important. The center does so much for so many. And if Israel is going to be able to continue as a democratic country and for progressive Judaism to thrive, we need the Daniel Center to function at its highest level. So now more than ever, we need to support the center. So with that, I'd like to introduce, and it's my honor to introduce Ambassador David Saranga. He and I became best friends about 10 minutes ago. Ambassador Saranga is a career diplomat. He served as Israel's ambassador to Romania, as the head of the European Parliament Liaison Department at the Mission of Israel in the EU in Brussels. He was consul for media and public affairs at the Consulate of Israel in New York. During his tenure in New York, he was responsible for Israel's image in the United States and was the main point of contact for national American media outlets. He was also the senior foreign affairs advisor to President Rivlin. Since August 2022, Ambassador Saranga has served as the lead strategist for the Digital Bureau of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, ensuring that Israel's public image and message is promoted through photographs, infographics, hashtags, and calls to action. This is a tremendous undertaking and one that is ever so critical in the age of social media. So with that, Mayor, would you like to say a few words and begin our conversation with Ambassador
Steve, thank you for your warm words about Beit Daniel. And welcome, David, to this group. Thank you for your time. I know that you're very busy. Probably you will be very busy in the next few hours as well. But in this point, thank you for being with us. David, you have a very tough job at this point. What is going on? How Israel is telling her story at this point in the world? Before October and after October, what is the change in your capacity?
First, thank you, Steve, for your kind words. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the amazing job you are doing with Bet Daniel here in Israel, such an important institution. Really, highly appreciated. For us diplomats in general, I think for the entire Israeli population, life is divided before October 7th and after October 7th. And if I look at through this prisma to Israel's public diplomacy, or to Israel's hasbara, as we all call it, I think there are two major changes. First, in the past, we used to divide the public opinion into three. The people who support Israel, the ones we call them the choir, on the one hand. On the other hand, we had the people who, no matter what Israel will do, they will oppose Israel, they will criticize Israel, they will bash Israel. And in the middle, we had a silent majority of 60, 70% of people to whom we used to talk. After October 7th, according to my judgment, people have to choose sides. You either with Israel or you are supporting Hamas. Now, when I say you are either with Israel or you support Hamas, it doesn't mean that if you support Israel, you cannot criticize Israel. It doesn't mean that if you support Israel, you cannot criticize Israel or that you have to accept everything that the Israeli government is doing. Not necessarily, but you have to choose a side when it comes to where your heart is. And it has implements over our activity. Because in the past, we used to talk to this silent majority in the middle. Today, I think we are speaking to the half whose hearts are in the right side or on our side. And I think that like many Israelis, also our activity, we are still stuck in this date, October 7th. And I explain myself. In the past, we used to do a lot of branding activity for Israel, which means cultural activities, speaking about high tech, speaking about technology, speaking about science, speaking about the multicultural society of Israel. Since October 7th, we are dealing only with the geostrategic issues. We are dealing only with the conflict. I hope soon it will change. I hope soon we'll restart our branding activity. We will restart the building the brand called Israel. But I'm afraid that what we have seen in the last 12 months, which means the anti-Semitism or the wave of anti-Semitism, together with the wave of anti-Zionism, it's here to stay. And we will have to learn how to live beside these waves of anti-Semitism. We will have to live beside this wave of hateness and so on and so forth.
David, let's talk a little bit about fake news, the attack in the media against Israel using fake news. Part of the pictures that are coming from Gaza, from Lebanon right now, your job in the ministry, I mean, you see the wave coming from our region to the world. How you and the ministry and the Israeli government is dealing with this wave, the threats, actually the existence of the state of Israel. We are called to the court. Our leaders are in dangers in this point, traveling in the world. The questions that how we do our work, your work in the field, in the world, in order to stop that, or to give a different perspective from the Israeli side?
You're right. Right now, we are fighting on three different fronts. One, the military front, which is the most important one, on the ground in Gaza and in Lebanon. The second front is the legitimacy front, the one I'm responsible for. And the third one is the law, ICC and ICJ, and so on and so forth. And the legal front, on the one hand, the legitimacy front on the other hand, and the front and the military front, they are all combined. One influences the other. If we want to win the war in Gaza, we need the two elements as well. If we want to win the war in Lebanon, we can't avoid the ICC or the ICJ. We cannot avoid the battle for our legitimacy. Now, speaking about fake news, I would go above and I will say that today, social media or social media platforms have become a threat to democracies. And as a person who is very active on social media, as someone who is using social media in order to spread Israel's message, in order to echo Israel's message, I can say that our biggest threat, not only for Israel, also for democracies, are the platforms, the social media platforms. And I can be even more specific, and I can say that TikTok is the biggest threat, first, and second, also Twitter. Each platform has its own characteristics. Each platform has different characteristics, but these two platforms, which allow people to spread fake news, and you know, there are no barriers. Everyone can post whatever you want to post, and people, when they get a message, when people get a message from an authentic or so-called authentic person, it is perceived much more reliable than when it comes from the government. Why? Because we, people working for the government, we are paid by the government. In many cases, we are perceived as propaganda. And when someone is posting a video about what's happening in Gaza, and he doesn't have to bring facts and he doesn't have to refer to facts, he's just standing in front of the camera and he's saying that his nonsense, people believe it. And they believe it because it's authentic. And this is the world we are living in. Now, when it comes to TikTok, the problem is much deeper. Two reasons. First, we all know who owns TikTok. And the government, which owns TikTok, perceives the world through a lens of the tension between the powers. And Israel, as the ally of the United States, is in the opposite path. Therefore, we know, and we saw it, and also the Wall Street Journal wrote about it, and there was other research about it. We know that content related to Israel, or content which is a pro-Israel content, gets much less exposure than content which comes from the pro-Palestinian side. Moreover, a few months ago, one of the leading directors of TikTok Israel resigned, saying that the level of anti-Semitism in the company is so high, and the company is not doing anything in order to confront it, so he just resigned. What I want to say is that this threat, and the most important thing is that we know that around 30% or more than 30% of young Americans, they get their news from TikTok. Which means in the past, when people used to read newspapers or see the news on television, there was an editor, there were some barriers, there were checks and balances. Today, they do not exist. And I must tell you that for me, it's very frustrating. Who could imagine that after October 7th, after we were raped, massacred, butchered, you name it, we will be where we are today. Yes, it's true. The images coming out of Gaza are horrific. It's true. The world keeps on seeing these images, which are terrible. But still, we have to remember why Israel is there, why Israel is acting there. And if I try to foresee what is going to happen on the Lebanese front, if we are going to start if we are going to start operating a ground operation in Lebanon, I'm not optimistic. I'm not optimistic because we are starting after 12 months in which we already exhausted our credit in the public opinion. We're talking about after 12 months in which the world have seen Israel acting in Gaza, destroying Gaza, and now we are going to another front, to Lebanon. And I want to remind you that Lebanon is not Gaza. I mean, people perceive Lebanon in a different way. The sentiment towards Lebanon is much more positive comparing to Gaza. On top of it, we are talking about a Christian community which exists there. So I'm not optimistic. What we are trying to do and what we are doing is two things. First, we emphasize on the fact that Hezbollah is a real threat towards Israel. Not only this, 70,000 people, 70,000 Israelis are not living in their homes right now on the border. We had to evacuate them. 70,000 people are refugees in their own country. And if we want these people to return, we have to act. By the way, for 11 months, 12 months, we have been trying to find a diplomatic solution, because no matter what the Israeli leaders say, I can assure you that everyone prefers, right or left, everyone prefers a diplomatic solution. The reason is simple, because we know that even if we are going to have a war with Lebanon, even if we are going to hit them hard, and even if we are going to be hit hard, at the end we'll have to sit down to negotiate and to reach an agreement. So why to pass through all these phases of war? Having said that, Nasrallah and Hezbollah think differently. They think differently. So coming back to this, talking about the Lebanese front, I'm not optimistic. I'm not optimistic. I don't know if you heard, but there are also already voices that the Israeli army, the IDF, is preparing itself for a ground operation. But we have to push back Hezbollah to the north of the Litani River, which is 25 kilometers. And I remind everyone that the UN Security Council decided upon the fact that Hezbollah shouldn't be in this area. It's the 1701 Security Council resolution, which was adopted in 2006, and Hezbollah kept on violating this resolution.
David, I want you talk about earlier about TikTok and X. I want to go back to the regular media. Let's talk a little bit about what is going on in the United States, in Europe, in the world, with the media that we used to call. Let's talk about the BBC. We just had the survey, the research about the behavior of the BBC. What do you find from your perspective, our perspective in Israel, toward the media in North America, and why it happens? Why the gap between reality and what is covered by the media is so big? And how do you feel as a diplomat that speaks, that gives our story, and this story is not heard, or sometimes finds itself so different there in the media?
I know that on this forum, we have people who really care about Israel. And as people who care about Israel, we all know that whenever we see a biased article, it's something that causes us really pain. But at the same time, I want to remind you that after October 7th, the big media outlets really, I don't want to say that they brought the real story to the readers, but they covered everything regarding October 7th. They covered the massacre, they covered the Nova Festival, they covered the sexual assault over Israeli women. The New York Times had its in-depth article about the sexual violence. And all these stories coming from Israel were there, and people read them. And when you ask me, how do you feel about it? I feel that we have a bigger problem than that. I feel that social media platforms are so bad for democracy, are so bad for Israel's image, that I say, okay, it's true, the BBC had, according to the company we checked, the BBC 1,500 times was wrong when it comes to Israel. But still, in all other cases, I don't want to say it was balanced, but it was trying to be balanced. When we speak about social media, and the narrative is shaped on social media, the narrative is shaped mainly on Twitter. That's why we as a state, we invest so much efforts on social media. That's why, because we understand and we know that at the end, the message is shaped there. When it comes to the mainstream media, when it comes to the traditional media, it's something which was cooked already on social media. So therefore, and the problem is that, at the BBC, at least you have an editor. The New York Times, they have an editor. It's true, they are biased. It's true, but at the end, there is a certain limit they do not cross. When it comes to social media, as someone who is active on social media, and I see accounts with millions of followers, people who are spreading lies, but lies which can remind us, the years in which the Inquisition was against Israel. Years in which, medieval years of anti-Semitism, spreading fake, which you can't even imagine. So this threat is much higher than the other one. And again, now, another thing is that we always forget, but at the first months of the war, the first months after October 7th, we had the sympathy, or we had the support of the international community. The US president came to Israel, the president of France, the prime minister of Great Britain. Every week we had 3 or 4 leaders coming to Israel to show their support. What happened is that the images coming out of Gaza made these leaders to be more sensitive, I'll call it, to their constituency, to their public to their public. And I know it, when leaders are coming and meeting, when foreign ministers are coming and meeting our minister, one of the first things they tell him, look, we have pressure from the streets. And the pressure that we see in the streets of Europe, for example, and even in the streets of New York and other places, they are because of changes which we see in societies. The massive waves of immigration from the Maghreb, from North Africa, from Syria, and so on and so forth, change or have changed the character of societies. Today, when we see these huge demonstrations, by the way, demonstrations which were very well orchestrated before October 7th, and we only saw them after October 7th, most of the people marching them there are Muslims. When we see what we see on campuses in the United States, it's a phenomena where we see the green anti-Semitism, which means the Muslim anti-Semitism, combined with the red anti-Semitism, which means with the crazy progressive people on campus. And just the idea that the green and red are combined against Israel, it's ridiculous. When it comes to to the activity of campuses, or when it comes to anti-Semitism and manifestations on campus, I'm less worried. Not that what we see is something that makes me feel good, but there is and there are counter reactions to these activities. Many people, and we see it in research that we run, many people are not happy with what they see on campus. And I want to remind everyone what happened after during the Vietnam War. Many people didn't like the fact, even though that people were demonstrating against the war, but at the end, there were many others out there who didn't like what they saw. Now, no matter what we think about what the Israeli government is doing, what we see on campuses is something that we cannot accept. But it's not only our problem. And it's not only the problem of the Jews in the United States. It's the problem of the American society. And as I said, since we start to see counter reactions to this phenomena, I'm a bit optimistic.
David, I think that at this point we should move to questions, as you suggest earlier.
Please.
We're kind and ready to answer. So you have the list of people that ask questions, and guys, introduce yourself and limit your words to a question. Maybe a small statement, it's fine. David is here to answer.
Sure. Let me start to just put it in order. But one thing what we will do is, and I'm sure Ambassador Saranga will provide us all of the social media handles that you all are putting out so that you can follow it and reshare. I'm assuming you're going to suggest that. So we will get that to everyone after by email. And I would like to start with a question by Mr. Stolman. If you want to unmute, please feel free, or I can ask the question, just let me know.
Well, thank you. Look, the question I asked is basically this. Mr. Saranga, you and your colleagues are diplomats and you are Israelis. And we're talking here about how we change the minds of Americans in regard to their attitudes about Israel. And I suggest that you are not the expert in these fields. And I suggest there are experts in the United States. There are professional public relations firms, professional advertising firms, professional media consultants who understand and have to deal with the way that Americans perceive information, receive information, how they're influenced, how their minds can be changed. And I do not understand, I have never understood why the Israeli government is not enlisting and hiring the best American professional experts in this field. I don't believe it's a matter of money, because there's a lot of money looking for what to do. If you had a serious plan, I'm convinced you could raise the money. I'm talking about a major national campaign. You're sitting there and you made judgments this morning about what you think the priorities are, what you think the problems are, whether you're optimistic or not. And I suggest that in order to do this, you should enlist professional Americans.
So you might be surprised. Yes, it's a matter of money. Yes, it's a matter of budget. This is one of our plans, but at the end, it's the priority of the Israeli government. And we don't have the budget for that. I'm talking about the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Having said that, and I mentioned it at the beginning, it's not only the Israeli government problem. Yes, of course, it's our problem, but it's the problem of the Jewish community together with the Israeli government, because anti-Zionism or being anti-Israel and being anti-Semite, these two phenomena have become one after October 7th. There is no difference between them. So I think it will be wise to join forces on these issues.
I hope that we'll do that. Next question, Edith.
Alan, would you like to ask the next question?
Yes, I'm Alan Warshaw. I'm in Palo Alto, California. Thank you very much, sir, for your orientation. I want to defend you a little bit versus the previous comment, because I feel that I get lots of information which I think comes from your offices to Khan Radio's public radio in English and Times of Israel. So I know lots of things. I know about the displaced people. I know about the deaths of IDF soldiers and the atrocities. What I don't know is that I don't hear from America media except for the health ministry of Hamas, who publish numbers. And whether they're complete or whether they're accurate or not, the frustration for me is they're incomplete. They don't cover the Israeli side of what's going on in the war. And so my question really is, I know you create the data, so because I learn it, but I don't learn it locally, and people create these biases with the lack of the information that is available, because Israel gets criticized as not doing good PR, and that is not the right answer. In my comment, it's you do plenty of PR, but how come the media doesn't pick this up and share it better?
You know, usually people prefer to read a media outlet which has the same ideology or the same editorial line like your beliefs. In other words, if you are left-wing, I assume you will read the New York Times. If you are right-wing, I assume you will read either the Post or you will read the Wall Street Journal. Why I'm saying it? Because I agree with you. There is no lack of information. The information is out there. But at the same time, sometimes they don't want to be confused with facts. Sometimes they don't want, they want to show a certain narrative. So it's much easier not to bring this information to the readers or to their audiences. The media, the information is out there. Sometimes I think that there is too much information. For example, I know that this is something, and it's not only us, the foreign ministry, it's also the IDF, and it's also other institutions and other NGOs which are dealing with the Israel's PR and so on and so forth. The information is out there. But as I said at the beginning, there are many people who really don't care, or they don't want to know what is the reality. They have their own perception, they have their own paradigm, and they don't want to hear. I mean, they are blocked to hear others bringing their arguments. That's why I said that if in the past we used to divide the public opinion into three, now I divide it into two. When I say that you are with Israel, I mean that you want to hear exactly what you mentioned, that you want to hear what's happening in Israel. You want to know what are the figures. You want to know what's happening on the northern border, in the southern border, what's happening with the Israelis. It doesn't mean that you don't care or you don't want to hear what's happening on the Palestinian side in Gaza. It's okay, that's fine. But many people, they are blocked in their perception, and they don't want other information to penetrate their mind.
Thank you.
And I will relate to what Edith said. I'll send you through Meir a list of all our social media platforms. I mean, for example, our platforms in English, which are the most active ones, we upload, I think, more than 20, 30 tweets a day, and each tweet has its own content, and it's something that first, I'm sure that it will be useful for you, and second, it will be also interesting, and sometimes what you will find there are things that you find in the traditional media. And this is one of the advantages. This is one of the advantages that we can bypass the mainstream media with our messages. And another thing, you know, at the end of the day, we are talking also about numbers. How can you compare, or how can we compete 15 million Jews with 1.6 billion Muslims? I mean, with all their respect to our activity, and they have a lot of respect to our activity, at the end we are talking about numbers, and we are talking here about big numbers. That's why always when I speak to people, I tell them, I wish I could convince the entire population. I wish I could convince the entire world. I will not succeed. So therefore, since our resources are limited, what we do, we address the people who are the movers and shakers of every society. We are talking about people in the academia, we're talking about people in the media, we're talking about people in the economic field, and so on and so forth. I wish we could reach everyone, but we know that we are not going to reach everyone. But what we want is to reach the elite, the leaders in each field.
So I think that actually addressed a question that Elizabeth had, which is, you know, what do we do to inform world leaders? So you're saying that's sort of your strategic tactic. We're not going to convert the non-converted at this point. So you're going after maybe the influencers?
I put it this way. It's good that you spoke about the influencers. As I said, a message which comes from a private person, it is perceived as an authentic message, and therefore this message is more influential or influences more. What we did 2 months ago, and when I say we, I mean the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we gathered the 300 most or the 300 biggest influencers on social media, Jewish influencers on social media, and together they had more than 180 million followers all combined. And we sat with them for 2 days in New York. We brought them from all over the United States, and we were together for 2 days in order to find ways, on the one hand, to fight anti-Semitism, and second, to bring the message or to educate people about Israel, to tell them the Israeli story. And I'm sure you know, when you see someone online and you have a kind of a relationship with, or a digital relationship with this person, and you become to know him, so in a certain point, you get his message. And in a certain point, you feel as if he's a friend. And when you get a message about Israel, in this case, from someone that you know already, you will get this message easier than you get the message from an official Israeli spokesperson. So that's why we joined forces with these 300 Jewish influencers. And I can tell you that after this conference, I saw how the amount of content they created really increased. But this is a process. This is a process. And we did one. Soon we are going to do another one with students. But this is an ongoing process.
And we have another question from Rear Admiral Robinson, but one other question we had was, what about the non-Jewish influencers?
We tried, not only that we tried, we also succeeded. We brought also non-Jewish influencers. But you know, when you start building your army, the first people you appeal to are people who are close to you. And since we also describe this conference as a conference to combat anti-Semitism, it was obvious that first we'll bring the Jews, the Jewish influencers. But totally, we are not looking only for the Jews, but unfortunately, most people online who fight anti-Semitism are Jewish.
Rear Admiral Robinson, would you like to pose your question?
I would. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And thank you for the time with us. And Mayor, thank you for pulling this together and for everything that you do for our people in Israel and abroad. So I've been really involved in both Israeli and mostly American public life since the 1960s. And we've always talked about Israel needs better hasbara. It needs to explain itself better. And if only we could, explain ourselves, it was, Shalom al Yisrael, everything would be great. And we don't speak a lot about perhaps failures in policy initiatives. Let me just suggest a few befuddling facts. By the way, my basic environment is with senior military leaders in the United States, overwhelmingly supportive of Israel. And we know that the right wing of the United States is, I'm being sarcastic here. They're not anti-Semitic because they support Israel. And that there is a bit of Ma'anyan Shemitah Lahar Sinai. There's a bit of wonder as to how those are connected. But what we look at, when I look at a failure of policy, the United States put on the table in February a remarkable initiative to normalize the status of Israel in the Middle East, including full relations with Saudi Arabia. Yeah, Gotenu, pardon the Yiddish, Elohim HaChaim, Saudi Arabia, how could that be? There have been times when we had overwhelming public support, right after October 7th, of course, but also back in April after the Iranian strike of over 300 missiles. And we just let that go by providing extraordinary lack of initiative in Gaza. One other, everybody I know on the military side says, we know that an internally based insurgency can never be fully defeated. There is no such thing as total defeat. And yet the government continues to talk in terms of total defeat. So it undermines if we could only explain better, and I'll end with this, there is an American legal expression that if the clock strikes 13, it's a 12-hour clock. If the clock strikes 13, don't believe it's on the hour, don't believe anything about it. As soon as, you put out information that is not credible, then everything else seems to be susceptible to critique. So your reaction to that, and I apologize for putting you in the middle, but that's your job.
No, but you should remember, Admiral, my friend, that David is a civil servant.
My reaction is
That's why, Mayor.
Yeah.
That's why I apologize for putting him in
And
the
he's
middle.
quite modest. He's doing a lot. I'm telling you that the stuff that is getting to people around the world is amazing.
And I don't mean to
the aim
diminish
is
the
to
work
the leadership
that's
in
being done.
every country. My wife is serving, as you know, right now in Prague, and I think that every minister, every parliament member, every journalist knows so much about the war and what is going on from the Israeli perspective, and it works all over Europe. The question again is the pressure from within the country, as David said, from the streets. David doesn't fix the guidelines.
But I would like to address, even though I'm a career diplomat and I'm civil servant and I'm not going to enter to internal politics in Israel.
Which is fun.
Sorry?
Which is fun.
It's when I sit with the friends, it's fun, but not when I speak publicly. But I agree with you that, and this is something that we also say internally when people criticize us for not doing enough in the field of hasbara, and when people criticize the foreign ministry and the Israel and other entities that we are not doing enough in order to bring the message of Israel to the world. Hasbara is not everything. First is policy, then comes the hasbara. I mean, hasbara, we explain the policy. And if there are governments, and there are governments who do not agree with the policy, we can try harder. Sometimes we succeed, sometimes we succeed less.
Thank you.
Edith?
That's a great ending point. And one question before we go into finish and do a prayer for the state of Israel is any suggestions for, as you can see, people here on the line are committed, frustrated, sad, angry, everything you can think of, as I'm sure you are. What suggestions can they do with their own, hasbara? Any parting words that you might have for the group?
In difficult times, we all, as human beings, we try to go down the radar. It's not easy, especially not for you. It's not easy to speak out these days, I assume, because when we see the waves of anti-Semitism that you have to face, when we see the waves of hate that I assume many of you experience, it's not easy. I would ask you one thing. We highly appreciate your support. We need your support. October 7th taught us that there is no difference whether you are a Jew living in Israel or you are a Jew living in the diaspora. And I'm sure you know, and I don't want to enter to this issue, but I'm sure you are aware of the debate which we had here around different communities and about different communities. But what we saw after October 7th is that we are all in the same boat. And your support there, raising your voice, bringing the message of Israel to your surroundings, to the people who are around you, this is something that can help us very much. And once again, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank you for your support. We don't take it for granted.
And I promise to send each one of you the stuff from David, and make sure that you are on the list of foreign ministry, and spread the story. I mean, tell the story. David said that if you tell the story is less than you tell the story. When you tell the story to your friends, to your neighborhood, and your friends, it's a different than it's better than David or somebody from the organization telling.
Mayor, maybe I can also send you once a week, when we send to our allies all the messages of the week, and then you can share it with the community.
Yeah, we'll do so, of course.
Good.
Yeah.
That we'll do that.
David, thank you very much for your time. I know that you're very busy.
Thank you.
Probably you'll have to tell the story of tonight of what will happen. I hope that nothing will happen.
I just look at my WhatsApp and I say I'm such a busy person. Yeah, but I'll overcome.
And we are going to say Edith the prayer for the state of Israel. Who is leading this?
Yeah, I must say that I have some technical difficulty. I need to share the screen for the prayer for Israel, and I'm having a problem doing it. I am many things, but not that tech savvy. But let me see if it works. Alan, is Alan Warshaw?
We'll take this opportunity, Edith, in this point to say first, I hope to see you soon in Israel, or maybe North America. I will be in North America. after Thanksgiving. Before that, you are busy with the election and the story of the election. I hope that the good guys will win. I won't tell you who is the good guys, but you know who is the good guys, who are the good guys. And I hope to see you in Israel. And I would like to wish you in this point to all of us, Shana Tova, and tell the story of the state of Israel, tell the story of Beit Daniel, of our movement, our reform movement in Israel. Israel needs this voice, that voice of pluralism, this voice that called for democracy, that voice that called to a better Israel and offer better Israel. So don't hesitate to tell the story and try to think from a positive perspective in this dark time that we are experienced in the last few months. So who is leading that
Our
tefillah?
good friend Alan Warshaw from
Oh,
Palo Alto.
Alan. Wow,
I think
from
it came
Palo
on the
Alto.
screen.
Straight
Alan,
from Palo Alto.
Okay.
I think it's on the screen for everyone. So please,
Yeah.
Alan, if you can lead us.
Thank you. Prayer for the state of Israel. Protector, rock, and redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for our redemption. Shield it beneath the wings of your steadfast love and spread it over the shelter of your peace. May a spark of your spirit inspire the actions of its president, prime minister, officials, judges, and advisors, that they may follow the path of righteousness, liberty, and freedom. Strengthen the hands of those who build and protect our holy land, and grant them salvation and life. Grant peace to this land and everlasting joy to its inhabitants. Be near to all the people of Israel throughout the lands of their dispersion. Plant within their hearts the love of Zion, and may those who are people who are so inspired come to Jerusalem, your city, which bears your name. Spread your spirit over all the inhabitants of our land. Uproot hatred, jealousy, and evil. Plant in the hearts of love and peoplehood, peace and friendship, and speedily fulfill the vision of your prophet. May nation not lift up sword against nation, neither will they learn war anymore. And let us say, Amen.
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 Final words.
Shana Tova.
This time, 24 hours ago, we opened at Beit Daniel an exhibition of a painter by the name Terry. He was massacred with his wife and his caregiver at Kibbutz Be'eri. We had here about 300 people. I was moved to see the picture, the work of Terry, and the beautiful exhibition that is spread here at Beit Daniel. But in a certain point, when his friend talked about him, we had here a lot of people from Be'eri, and the name Be'eri is well known to each one of you. In a certain point, one of them stood and started to sing. He sang a song about sailor fighting storm and trying to make sure that the small ship will save them. And I thought to myself, wow, what a hero, what a heroes. People, after such a evil attack on them, after the year that they had, still singing. And I get up this morning, came to my staff and says, a nation that can sing after such a brutal attack, and after a year like this, people that can sing after that, nobody can win them. Nobody can overcome them. And this is the story. With all the dark that we saw last year, we have to return to normality, rebuild ourselves, make sure that Israel will be safe and strong again, and will be home to each one of us, because we need that home. There's no other place that Jew can feel safe. And you know that, we know that. And right now, not North America and not Israel is safe for us. We should work hard, as David said, Ambassador David Saranga, we should work together. Thank you for your love and support, your care. The emails that we get makes me happy all the time. You care, well, what is going on? What happened? Are you safe? The community is safe? It helps us to go through that evil time that we see in Israel. And again, people that can sing after that, and you saw from their eyes the terrible experience that they had. You know, those people. I could see that, and they could sing. I will send you, Edith. I think we should send
Yeah, we can send the video.
Somebody took a short video of that.
We'll send
Try to, when we get it from us, try to understand those people saw in their own eyes the worst evil of this world, and they're standing and singing. And singing, we shall overcome. We will win. Nobody can defeat us. It's amazing. It's makes my heart. And I'm going to speak about that in Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah. Believe me, and you should do that as well. Tell the story. We're still singing, and we will win. Don't worry. Toda rabah. Thank you for being, and David, thank you very much for your work.
Thank you, and come and visit Israel.
Yeah, all of them are.
Come and visit. I'll be happy to meet you while you are here.
I will make sure that.
With great
David,
pleasure. I'll
toda
host
for
you
your
at the foreign
time.
ministry. I'll host you at the foreign ministry.
Thank you. Toda, toda.
Thank you. Toda rabah.
Thank you, everyone.
Toda.
Shana Tova. Thank
Shana
you.
tova.
Shana Tova. Shana Tova.
Mayor?
Yeah.